Welcome to Excel Beyond Boundaries, episode 30, with Daniel Ray, who is a judge advocate in the U.S. Army who currently works at the Pentagon. Thank you for joining us, Daniel.
Thanks, John. I appreciate you having me on.
I'm excited, and I've got a lot of questions for you. But first, taking it way back, where did it all begin for you?
So I was I was born in uh, Johns Island in Charleston, South Carolina, in the woods, basically in a little cabin where my dad was a fisherman, and he and my mom had me at home, and so that was kind of like a very interesting like story for me growing up when I was like, oh, that's interesting. Born in
So,
the middle of the woods.
so you weren't born in a hospital at all. It was a home birth.
Yep, home birth. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. My dad, he'd done a lot of jobs. He'd been a lawyer. He'd done a little farming. He'd been an accountant and a small like airplane pilot. Um, he'd done all types of stuff. And then he at this part of his life, he was older. He was in his 50s. He'd be if he was alive today, he'd be yeah, 95, 96 years old this year. And yeah, he just done a lot. So he wanted to be the first person to hold a son. So he like studied up on how to like deliver a baby. They did have a midwife present, but yeah, that was kind of how it started for me. And yeah,
That's crazy, man. Yeah, I've never met anyone who was not born in a hospital.
yeah,
That's
most of
cool.
my boys were born in a hospital, so
Yeah.
I'm a fan of that. I can't. We had a tough birth with our first child, and I can't. My wife did, and I can't imagine us doing that anywhere other than a hospital. But
Better
good.
better to play it safe though.
Yeah, absolutely.
How many kids do you have?
We just have two. My wife and I. We have a 9-year-old and a 4-year-old.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, they're good. One of them, same name as you, Jonathan, same spelling and everything.
Oh,
That's
really?
yeah, good kid. He's very much a handful though.
Yeah, those ages keep you busy
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure. That's so then what brought you to working at the living in DC? The
yeah,
Pentagon is in DC?
yeah. I'm in DC. I'm in the Falls Church area, right outside of DC. So, I mean, my job did being a lawyer in the Army, being we're called judge advocates. Um, kind of moved around a lot. I've been in about 15 years, and so I never thought I'd be in DC. Never planned on it. Never really asked for it. Started my first job. I was in Italy for about 2.5 years. Then I was at Fort Bragg, North Carolina for about 4 years, and then Savannah, Georgia area for another few years. Bounced around, did some educational schools here and there. Stuck around Georgia for a bit, and then they were like, "Hey, you're going to the Pentagon," and that was in 22. And I was like, "Okay." And I thought I'd just be here for 2 years and just get out. Now I'm going on 3 years at the Pentagon, and I'm getting ready to move locations into to another office in the DC area, where I'll be here for another 2 years. Which there's, I mean, good and bad. Like I do love the Southeast. From South Carolina, my wife and I are very much looking forward to getting back there when it's time to retire from the military.
I see.
Yeah, that's our plan. Is to be back. I'll probably still practice law a little bit, but I also want to have like a coffee shop and a gym because those are other things
Uh,
I'm about. But at this right now, I mean, I'm enjoying my like work life balance in DC for the time being. Yeah,
so you've enjoyed working at the Pentagon, the time that you've been there? Like,
yeah,
what has that been like?
yeah. It was nothing. It's kind of like nothing. It's everything you imagine, and it's nothing what you imagine. It's
Uh,
when I was. I always like to really like research something before I like dive into it, and that's the way I approach my cases. When if I'm a prosecutor or defense attorney, it's the way I approach working out. People ask me like I do deadlift lessons for other people in the military sometimes
oh, wow.
because I'm real nerdy about the deadlift. And when people start talking to me about deadlift form, like, what's going on? Like how is this so technical? I was like, there's a lot everywhere. And so with the
That's true.
Pentagon, I was trying to figure out like how do I get in? Like they got to have crazy security, and they do. Like, I mean, like everything's gonna. It just kind of mind blowing. Like I'm gonna go and I'm gonna work in the Pentagon all day, like in this building. That's just crazy. Um, but figuring it out, like I initially, we live pretty close, so I can drive in every day, which is somewhat unusual. Um, but it's been good. It's been a very eye-opening experience to wander around that building and you see people who are from the Space Force or the Coast Guard or the Navy or whatever else, and all the civilians that support the military who work in that building, and you come across people who work in a completely different part of you know the military industrial complex than you do, and you just kind of like, wow, this is a massive undertaking.
So it's like a collaborate. So that's the main building where that kind of brings them all together in a sense.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
see. And you said it was 5 stories by 5 corners.
Yeah, so you got the rings, and this isn't super secret. You can look this up, so I'm not saying anything that'll get me in
Oh
trouble.
yeah.
But yeah, so you have the five main levels, and within those five main levels, there are five like rings, concentric type rings, and so it's like from small all the way to big, and yeah, and there's escalators and there's stairs and there's things like that. There's also a mezzanine and a basement level. I don't go to the basement because the basement doesn't follow the same logic as the five stories. If you go to the basement, you need to know exactly where you're going because everything kind of looks the same. And I've had friends tell me like they've gotten lost in the basement of the Pentagon for hours.
Oh, for hours. Wow.
Yeah, so if I go to the basement, I know exactly where I'm going. I know exactly how I'm getting out. I don't venture anywhere else. Uh,
Man, that's kind of crazy. To have a building that's so complex.
yeah, it's huge. I think it's like 17 and a half miles of hallway or more. It's insanely massive. And there's no. I'm still learning things about the building. I like to say that I know where all the good food is. People actually come to me. They're like, "Hey, they ask me questions about where to eat because someone who trains, like, I want to know where I can get some food."
Oh
Um,
yeah.
yeah, and so they actually have a really good burrito bar in the Pentagon that just reopened about 3 months ago, and people are just always amazed that I know exactly what's going on with the food scene.
That's funny that they have like so everything from I know you had mentioned the gym and
Yeah,
then like a food court. That's it sounds like they really take care of everyone that's in there though.
yeah. I mean, they have to. I mean, there's so many people. You have. Yeah, I mean, it is like a little city. They've got I mean, the gym's massive. It's on the mezzanine level, so a little bit underground. Um, the food court, so it's not one food court. There's a main food court. They have multiple food courts, and so they have all types of stuff. We just got a Moe's this last summer, towards the end of last summer. So they got a Moe's burritos.
Most is good.
Yeah, Moe's is all right. It's not the best burrito in the Pentagon though, but it's all right. Um, and they've got a bunch of pizza places. They've got Subway. They've got all the those types of things. And then they have vendors that show up, every now and then. There's this one company that shows up and they do empanadas, and their empanadas are the best.
Oh
Whenever
man,
they're there, I'm like messaging people. I'm like, it's empanada day. Um,
that's awesome.
it's pretty good. They have like a jewelry store. They have like I mean, there's a mini. I see the doctor there sometimes if I'm injured, which actually happens more than I'd like to
Oh, they
admit.
have a doc like literally an office for
Yeah, well,
doctor.
they've got it's like a clinic. It's like a mini hospital, and
Wow, everything.
couple dental offices, things like that. Yeah, they got everything in there. It's wild.
That's amazing. To
Yeah,
do one lap, I know the 5 floors would make it times five, but if it's 17 miles of, room, is
yeah.
one lap like a couple miles to get around?
So maybe the internal ring. No, the internal ring is kind of like there's like an internal ring on every floor, right? And that's the way most people get around because that's the smallest ring. There's a chart somewhere, and I've seen it, where people have mapped out like miles and stuff. And there's like a wall. I think it was down near the basement. I saw this like sign on the wall, and it was like, if you walk this ring, it's this amount of distance, and there's like a lunchtime walking club or something. And I was,
That's awesome.
oh wow, you know. So those measurements are out there somewhere. Um, I'm usually trying to get from point A to B as quickly as possible. I think I have like 8/10 of a mile from the parking lot to the building or something like that. Um, that I have to walk every day anyways, just one way. So you do a lot of walk. That was one of the things when we moved here from Georgia. We got out and we're walk. You can walk around the DC area a lot, not just the Pentagon, like everywhere. There's
Oh, I've
lots.
heard about that. Very
Yeah,
walkable.
yeah. And it's very fun to explore. And I think my wife and the kids and I, the youngest was probably 2 or almost 2 when we got here. So I'm going carrying him on my shoulders everywhere. Well, my wife's carrying, the carrying him, and I'm carrying the oldest because he still wants to ride on Dad's shoulders sometimes. The first few weeks we were here, we were out exploring everywhere we could get to, and my wife, she was tracking our mileage, and she was like, "We're walking like 7 miles a day on the weekends when we're getting out and doing things." I'm like,
Whoa,
"Yeah, it's a lot."
that's a good amount. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, it was good because I moved here. I started doing jujitsu as soon as I got here. It was just something I'd always wanted to do. There was a good gym nearby. I didn't realize how good of a gym it was, but I knew there was a gym that was kind of popular. Um, and what amazed me was like the weight I lost from just walking and doing jujitsu. And then as I started competing in jujitsu, it made sense to, really get my body composition under control. Because when I'd been a power lifter in the past, I didn't really care. I was like, I just want to be strong, and I got to eat a lot of food.
Yeah, that's typical mentality for powerlifters.
Yeah, and that was it. It was, there was more or less a year of my life when I was in school, like pre-COVID, like 2019 to 2020, and I was living away from my family at the time. We didn't have my youngest yet. My wife and my oldest were still down in Georgia. I was in school in Charlottesville, Virginia, working and training at a conjugate gym, and I got up at 4:30 every morning, and I would eat a can of beans and like 5 eggs,
Oh,
and that was like to get food in my system. I'd hit the gym at 5:30. I'd have like another breakfast after my workout, and then I would have like a big lunch. And I was hitting like 200, 250 grams of protein like every day.
a good amount.
Yeah, well, and you lifting in a good environment with good training partners. I mean, you get really strong. Like I moved there with the intention of getting my deadlift, which had kind of stalled around like the low 400s to 500 pounds. And then
Nice.
like 6 months I was there, and then COVID hit, and then I was, the military, they had us locked down pretty hard for a while. So I was training alone a lot, and that
Uh,
that kind of was a bummer. But um, I mean, yeah, yeah, I don't know, it's interesting.
yeah, interesting how there's different training phases where you have like a different focus. Like I had like a cardio phase, and like power phase, and a lot of people don't realize they can have both. They can do, cross train and have kind of the best of both. So it's cool that it seems like you train, yeah, hybrid style.
Yeah, no, that's 100%. And I think I've always trained like that. Like, I mean, to go back, like when I was growing up, I'd say most of my childhood was like me and my dad. And I just lived with my dad, and we lived in the middle of nowhere, South Carolina, and I played baseball. Pretty much just played baseball until I got a little older and added some more sports in. But I always wanted to like just be able to move. And as I've gotten older, I've always been like, well, okay, but is it functional? I think that's what ultimately led me to jujitsu. Um, I wanted my oldest and I wanted my kids to get into something like that. In my 20s, I had boxed a bit after law school, and I stopped doing that because, I mean, now with like fighting sports, like even with striking sports, they've figured out they don't have to go hard all the time. But I was boxing in a gym in my mid 20s, where like most of the dudes in there, I mean, they weren't like me. They were like teenagers, early 20s maybe, and they were all trying to escape poverty.
Oh, okay. That was their way out.
Yeah, that's their way
Yeah.
out. And I'm just like a guy who, like, I mean, at the time I didn't really have My dad passed when I was 10. Like I'm kind of on my own when I got out of law school 25. I didn't really have, the best family situation. Um, and I was just trying to do something. And it's one of the security guards at the courthouse I was working at, because I was working for a judge for a few years. Um, he kind of like took me under his wing, and he was an older guy, and he was like, he'd been a power lifter, he'd done all these things, he'd been a cop, he'd been in the army, and he's like, hey, you ever thought about boxing? And I was like, well, yeah, I've thought about it, but I have no idea where to go. And he took me to these places where, I
That's
mean,
amazing.
oh, it was great. It was a great experience. I meet these guys, and they knew that I was like, they initially would judge me as different, because they're like, well, this guy's like a lawyer. Like, what's he doing here? Like, we're just trying to like go pro. And I did that for a while. I did have another mentor sit down with me and say, hey, like you've got a law degree, you've got student loans, you want to have a family one day, like, and you're a little old. Like, I don't know that this boxing thing is going to be your way forward. And I mean, I had to think about it because I love boxing. Um,
Uh,
but the path I was on, like, I saw more of those guys not making it.
I
Um,
see.
Making it. I mean, we saw a lot of, I saw some really talented boxers who just didn't have their everything in their life together, and it wasn't working out for them. And I was like, I have a full time job. I've got to figure out what's going on. It looks like I'm going in the army, because after working for 2 years in South Carolina for a judge, it was either go to a law firm, or I had this offer from the military to be a judge advocate. And this guy who was a partner at a law firm called me. He had been a judge advocate in the army himself. He said, look, we'll give you a job. You can come work at the law firm, but you're going to hate it. I know you're going to hate it, because the guys who told me about you, they, you might not notice this, but they always come up to you to ask you what you did last weekend, because you were out hiking, or you were in a box,
Oh wow. They
or
were
you were like doing something wild.
living through you, living
Yeah.
vicariously through you.
And he was like, you realize, like, those guys haven't taken vacations in like forever. And I was like, yeah, that's a good point. He's like, you're going to be working like 100-hour plus weeks.
Man, that's crazy. 100-hour weeks?
Yeah, I mean, at law firms, like, yeah, that's, I mean, especially as a young associate, that can definitely happen.
That's insane.
You got to get those billable hours in. And, I remember having friends who did that life for a while after law school, and you hear about people sleeping in the office, and, it's, the guy told me, he said, look, it's not, he said, I think you're going to hate your life, because you clearly care about taking care of yourself. You care
Oh
about
yeah.
fitness. You care about your health. And he said, I think the Army is going to allow you to continue to do that, because you have to be in shape. You have PT tests. You
That's
have
true.
to work out. And so I think you should give it a shot. And I mean, I think he was right. Like 5 years later, I paid off all my student loans from law school, which was huge.
Not bad. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was really good. Like the JAG Corps helped me pay off my student loans. That was phenomenal. Um, I got to do a lot of courtroom work that was at times terrifying. I remember when I had to get in court for the first time this past year. I was always scared. And frankly, even after doing it for about 4 years, um, and then switching over to doing defense work, that was terrifying as well, because then you have someone's life in your hands. You
Oh
go,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, someone could go to jail. That's the fear, right? Is like, when you're a defense lawyer, it's like, man, if this person's not guilty, which I had clients like that, or let's say maybe they're guilty of something, but not everything they're charged with.
I see. A lot of responsibility.
Yeah, you don't want them to go to jail. I've been in there where, I mean, I had a client one time. I won't go into details, but he was facing life. And
Oh,
we were able to work it out, and he got like 28 months.
oh
You know?
wow. Big
Yeah.
difference.
Oh, yeah. It was a big thing. I had another client who he was facing like 20, 22 years. He probably would have never gotten that much time, but I think he got 45 days or something.
Oh man. You changed people's lives with that, with your career.
You absolutely can, and I mean, and the flip side, and as a prosecutor, if someone did something wrong, I mean, you want to make sure that they serve an appropriate sentence for that. So
True.
it's both ways, and I've seen it. Um, I've seen people where you're like, man, I think if I'd done a better job, if I'm, you see it both ways where you really question yourself on that. So,
Man, I can imagine that's a lot of you have responsibility to have someone's, life in your hands in a sense.
yeah, and then that was what was cool about the defense side of things. I only did it for 2 years. I really enjoyed it though. At the same time, I kind of had the same mentality as a prosecutor. Like if many years ago, I was talking to a federal prosecutor. He was actually the father of my battalion commander that I went to Afghanistan with. So my battalion commander, he was a Green Beret. I was with the Special Forces unit, deployed to Afghanistan. We come back, and my boss's father comes to visit at some point. I can't remember what it was for. Maybe it was a promotion or something for my former boss. But his dad was talking to me about like being a prosecutor because he's been a prosecutor, a federal prosecutor for like 30 years. And he was like, you know, in his mind, which was this, we had the same opinion. It's like, if you're prosecuting someone, you have the evidence lined up, they did what you're accusing them of doing. And if you don't have the evidence, don't charge it. Don't just don't do it. And it's a thing that I think, there's a correlation there with fighting, jujitsu, MMA, lifting. Sometimes we like to think of things, we want things to be perfect. We don't know what perfect is. But I say this all the time in so many contexts. The perfect is the enemy of the good. And so that's how it is with my current training cycle, right? Like I work at the Pentagon, I have my family, I got my boys and they're in after school things. My wife, she's been going through a cancer battle for the last year. So I have all these things. So, people ask me all the time, well, how do you find time to train? I was like, well, I really just apply principles at this point. Like I'm not in a place where I can run like an 8 to 12 week program that's perfect and I'm like hitting everything or hitting like
Yeah,
80 to 90% of my workouts. I'm not in a place like that right now, but I do need to get some max effort work. I do need to get some hypertrophy work in. The perfect or the best is the enemy of the good. And so tying
I
that
like
back to
that.
prosecuting cases, there's a tendency for like, and we see this all the time, there's a tendency to like overcharge a case. But what young prosecutors don't realize is that when they do that, they start to detach from reality. And when you're talking to a jury or a panel and you're trying to explain to them like, hey, this is what happened, if your evidence doesn't back that up, then there starts to be some cognitive dissonance in their brain.
Oh, you kind of lose credibility.
You lose credibility, absolutely. And we
I
see,
see.
I just talked to a friend yesterday who's in the middle of watching a case, and he's like telling me about the problems with some of the evidence as it's coming out in trial. And I'm like, they could lose the whole case.
Wow, I didn't realize. It makes sense though.
Yeah, well, because if you're whether it's a military panel or civilian jury, these people are sitting there. They've been tasked and they've sworn to like do their duty and listen to the evidence. Especially in a military setting, military panels they tend to really take that duty seriously. And I've seen military panels fully equip people who probably did some of the stuff they were charged with, to be honest with you, but some of the other things, it didn't add up. And when the math didn't add up for them, they're like, I don't know if I can trust anything this guy or this girl's saying.
Wow. So any exaggeration is just it takes away all credibility.
Yeah, and lawyers, we tend to use a lot of rhetoric when we talk. We try to be passionate and stuff like that. And what I've learned is, nah, try to be more objective. Like, try to be as objective as possible. And and that's part of like why I think my weightlifting and any sort of training I do, it's almost a meditation for me because the weights don't lie to me about where.
I like that. Yes, it is what it is. You get what you put in.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I've been working through last April. April of 24. My wife had just had a big surgery for cancer, and I hadn't been sleeping. I hadn't, I've been stressed. I've probably been getting like 2 hours a night because I'm getting up, helping her get her medication in and stuff like that. After she had a major surgery, and then one day I'd been running Pavel's AXE program. So I've been doing like heavy kettlebells, explosive kettlebell work, for like anywhere from 10 to 30-minute workouts. And I'd worked up to a 124-pound kettlebell, but I hadn't done all the benchmark workouts to move up beyond that. And when kettlebells start jumping at those higher weights, you really have to be on it,
Oh
especially
yeah.
especially if you don't. I mean, I compete at like 170 pounds, so I mean, you start getting heavier and heavier. Well, you're swinging something that weighs almost as much as you do,
Oh yeah.
and so I hadn't done all the work I needed to progress. And I also hadn't trained really in about 2 weeks because I'd been helping with my wife. And I was like, I got to catch up. And I've made this mistake with running. We've all made this mistake in lifting. And I saw that 150-pound kettlebell and I said, I won't do a long workout. I'll just do a short workout. And it was short. I don't think because I'm trying to swing it explosively. And I probably got 4 reps in, and it's the sacrotual ligament.
Oh
Yeah, which is
yeah.
powerlifting like end of career for a lot of folks. I think there's a powerlifting coach. I think he's down in Florida, Trevor Jaffe. I think he had the same injury a few years ago. And I thought I was like, this is no good. Like kettlebell, 150 pounds hits the floor, I hit the floor.
Mm.
Um,
So you like slightly tore it or?
Yeah, they don't. So I actually have an MRI next week that's going to check out a bunch of things. But sometimes it takes us a while to get MRIs in the military. Um, but yeah, so I went to physical therapy. I got a good physical therapist at Walter Reed last year. She was great,
Good.
and she was like, "What have you been doing?" I continued to move. I continued to do different things, um, and she was like, "Well, it's helping, but we do have to like fix some of the stuff because there's a lot of you were so misaligned throughout like your pelvis and your hips, and that's what's causing you some pain." And I was like, all right. So we worked through that for like 5 or 6 months of physical therapy, and she's like, yeah, I mean, I think you probably tore it a bit, but just keep doing what you're doing, keep doing the exercises, progress slowly. Um,
Okay.
and so that's kind of what I did. And a lot of it's by feel. I do a lot of different things. I mean, I do rope flow practice. I do some of the David Weck rotational movement training. I try to mess with that. There's a lot of folks out there doing that now. Um, at the same time, I mean, I do my jiu-jitsu. I do a lot. I've reincorporated in the last few weeks, and I'm noticing a difference. I try to stretch for like 20, 30 minutes a night.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's just basic stretching. Like I might watch a UFC fight, and I'll sit in like a full squat position and just kind of work my hips.
That's good.
Yeah, just for like one round. And I'm using my right to kind of like mash out my psoas muscle
It's a
every
good product,
great.
by the way. I
Yeah.
know the guy that invented it.
Oh,
He's an awesome guy. His name's Mac. The
oh,
product's such a good product. But I was gonna say,
yeah,
the I like the way you lift intuitively because I've seen you
yeah,
and I've seen the way you lift and how on your stories, and I feel like that's so important to listen to your body because your body tells you if your hips feel tight, you
yeah,
do a little more of what you're saying. If you feel good, you can go a little heavier. I
yeah.
love the way you train.
Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah, that's kind of how I mean, it's my focus for the last 3 years has been like jujitsu. I didn't mean for it to be that way. I started it, like I said, I train at Ryan Hall's gym in Falls Church. He's a UFC fighter. There's a couple other pro fighters there. I mean, there's a lot of folks, a lot of world champions have come out of that gym. And I didn't realize what I was walking into when I walked into that gym. I had no idea. I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. But it was really because I wanted my oldest to do jujitsu at the time. My youngest was a little too young.
Uh,
He and I started it together. He quit after 6 months, and I just kept doing it. And I met some good people there. I mean, I'm older. I'll be 42 this year. But some of the younger guys, they were like, hey, if you want to get better, you should try like competing. So I started competing. Uh,
nice.
and then all of my strength training, kind of like think about West Side. They talk about general physical preparedness and then sport specific, SPP. Um, And so I'm very focused on how do I get better for jiu-jitsu? How much
I see.
do I need? Um, what's funny is it kind of aligns with a lot of the powerlifting and things. Like, I'm not so focused on chasing a big deadlift necessarily, um,
Yeah.
but I am finding that I still have a lot of deadlift strength, even at like the 170s and below. Um, Doing things like grip training, which that's how I found it. That's how we connected because I was like, that's what I do. It's fun. I always look like who's really good at a thing. And so I remember I was doing this hanging thing, and I know I told you about this when we were messaging, and somebody reached out to me and they were like, "Hey, is that even safe?" I said, "I don't know." And so, like, who is the best at this? Dead hang, weighted dead hang, and your name came up, and I'm like, I'll reach out to the guy because that's how.
That's funny.
Who's the best at it? This guy's the best at it. Hey, I got to mess myself up. And you kind of told me stuff which made sense, and I'm like, all right, good, that helps. You know, that helps. You kind of look like you're built for that exercise, to be honest. And I'm like, all right, this is the right guy to like. This is the right guy to ask this question to.
No, I'm glad you reached out. It's and I like the way you do your research and you kind of go down like a Google wormhole,
Yeah,
and really become the expert. And so no, that was awesome to do, to reach out and get the feedback and then apply it. And I see you applying it to your training. Your
yeah.
numbers are going up.
Yeah, they are. Well, what's wild about it is it's the amount of horsepower that I have when I'm like grabbing someone now in jiu-jitsu that I don't have to tap into, but I know it's there, and so
Yeah,
I can like hang on and I can just relax, and I'm like, dude, I got so much in the tank right now.
yeah.
And
That's awesome.
it's very sport specific. And the other thing is the spinal decompression that I get from doing that. So important. And people don't think about that. Like this, doing things like I have a reverse hyper at home. Um,
Nice.
yeah, I should probably do that more. I get on it a few times a week, but things like that really. I want to be able to move well when I'm older. Mm,
Oh yeah. And I mean, you're right on track because, like, for example, there's these two guys that would always beat me in obstacle course races,
yeah,
and at the time I was like late 20s, early 30s, and they were mid 50s, and in mid to late 50s, and I could never catch them, and we would finish like top 10, top five, and it really showed me they were active their whole lives,
yeah.
just like you, and it really showed me that age is a much smaller factor than people say. I've had so many people with strongman or obstacle course races in their 40s, 50s beat me, and so it's like, at what age do we really have to slow down? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I don't talk about this a lot, but so I have a brother. I have a half brother. He lives in England. He is a legitimate Tai Chi master, and I was able to train with him when I was in college. I was able to go stay and train with him, and for many years he was like, I mean, he's in his 60s now, and he can still completely thrash me. He's
Wow.
moves like he's in his 30s. He doesn't look like he's in his 60s. Now, what's interesting is he has kind of come full circle in some of the things we disagreed on in my 20s because I like to lift weights. And he was like, you don't need to do that. It's not necessary. Now in his 60s, he's like, hey, can you teach me how to lift some weights? And we've actually been able to kind of meet in the middle where I've been able to understand powerlifting on a different level, understanding some of these like Eastern principles of yin and yang that sound very woo woo, but they're not. When you really start drilling down, it's you're like, oh, that's all they're saying. Okay, well that literally that's a one to one with like what this powerlift, this form of training is getting after, or this technique highlights that, which has been kind of wild. But the thing that he kind of showed me and has continued to show me is the how you can like move as you get older, but you have to take care of yourself. And so,
That's true.
yeah, I do like some Tai Chi standing practices. If I get a little too stiff, I'll do some movement practices. Honestly, the rope flow has kind of taken over that because it's very similar. And David Weck talks about a lot of principles that are captured in like Tai Chi and arts like that.
Interesting. I love how it's all coming together, like how the holistic aspect of training, the hybrid style training, but even the mental side. It's all becoming more mainstream.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in the mental sides, I mean, that's huge. I think for me, growing up, playing sports, wanting to be really good at sports, and I was good, but I was missing some gears. I think mentally in my teens that
Oh yeah,
led me to walk away. Like, I thought about playing a few sports in college that I was good at. Like, I was good at tennis, I was good at soccer, I was good at baseball, and I was athletic. And I was like, I ran into some hurdles, and I just don't think I had it there mentally to really buckle down and focus. And then I was able to kind of tap into that later in life, where I'm like, wait, I can still do things. And the military definitely helped me rediscover that. Being with a special forces unit, that's where that was probably when it comes to training, that's probably what really changed it for me the most, because that whole special ops community, first of all, they're all physical monsters. Like, I stand next to half those guys, and there's just these just monstrous human beings with freaky strength and wild endurance and just grit like you wouldn't believe. Uh,
really?
yeah, but I was able to learn a lot from them,
That's
and
awesome.
when I was in, the special ops units I was with, so the Third Special Forces Group, they had their own gym with all these professional trainers who had been like strength coaches for like Major League Baseball teams or football teams, and they were like, well, you can use this resource too. And so I just kind of like when I moved up here and there was a jiu-jitsu gym, I did the same thing when I was with Third Group back in 2013. Like,
That's awesome.
I was nervous back then. I was very nervous. I was like, oh, these guys are all like, legit killers and just big guys and just monsters. And they were like, no, just it's there. So I started going every day. I made myself go, and I would ask the coaches questions, and they would, they had like training plans, and some of the coaches were really cool. They gave me like training plans to take to Afghanistan, and I
That's
just,
amazing.
just yeah, stuck with it. And after that, I got into more powerlifting once I left that organization and went through like what everybody does, like the 5x5s, and then
Ah,
eventually, yeah, all that stuff like the 5-3-1 and everything else. Eventually, I found conjugate, and conjugate principles have been kind of a guiding thing for me. Just studying a lot of West Side stuff back in the day, um, trying to figure out on my own, but then actually training at a West Side affiliated gym was super, super beneficial.
that stuff is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's really good. There's so many things like I always like when people are starting out and they don't have a lot of time, or maybe they can't do a home gym. I usually tell people like, look, if you're not going to get a gym membership, uh, you know, just read some Pavel and try some of his basic stuff, and then just branch out from there. Like Pavel Satslin's programs have helped me a lot too. But what's funny is like he talks about Louis Simmons' West Side, and then if you read some of Louis Simmons' books, he'll talk about Pavel, and
Oh,
they're so
cross reference.
yeah. And, they'll reference other people, like Charles Poliquin's a guy who would always pop up, but and now you've got everyone doing like rotational movement and things like that. Like you see the landmine training, you see all the single side stuff.
Oh yeah.
I think you do both. I don't think you have to go all in on one. I play with both, and I do different things, and I just try to do hard things. Today, I didn't have a lot of time this morning. Had to help out with wife and kids and stuff, so I grabbed a sandbag and I did lunges down my block. Probably did a couple hundred yards of lunges with a sandbag on my back. And while I'm doing it, I might be doing some rotation while I'm getting down
Yeah.
to the lunge. Um,
Oh yeah.
and that comes from the lunging I started doing during COVID. I had a buddy who had gotten a little on the heavy side. He wouldn't mind me saying that. And he's like, "Hey, I need you to do the Corey G 12-week ab challenge with me." And I'm like, "No, dude, I don't. What is it? No way. Like, I'm not.
You said no to him.
Absolutely not." I said, "I'm not going to do it." And he's like, "Come on, man." And he was in New York, and I was in Georgia. And he was like, "Come on, man. Like, I really need you to do this with me, or I'm not going to do it." And so I was like, "Fine." After like a month, he convinced me to do it. And like I was getting up, my wife actually had some health problems at the time. This is, seems to be a theme, but it's not always a theme. It just so happened to be.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, she had had a surgery, and I was helping with the boys. Our youngest had just been born. He was probably like 4 or 5 months old, so that's another thing. But I was getting up at like 3:30 in the morning and hitting like a 2 hour Corey G workout, and I did that for. I didn't make it the whole 12 weeks. I got COVID pretty bad.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's rough.
yeah, but I did that 8 weeks of Corey G. That Corey G app challenge absolutely changed my strength, like my core. For
Really? I
like
did not expect that.
I'm still living off the interest of that 8 weeks, like years later. Like I've continued to work on my core and things like that, but the I mean, because every one of his workouts, you do 400 or you do the workout, then you finish with 400 to 800 meters of lunges.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't it was more functional and also full body?
Yeah,
Like was it more
so it was. I remember 4 days in, I was like, "There's no way you can do this. You're gonna get what is it?
oh oh
What is it?
rhabdo?
Rhabdo, yeah."
Yeah.
But after 4 days, like my body started to adjust. Like it was wild, and I was like, "Oh man, like I've got to keep doing this because it's like for some reason the soreness is going away, and
Interesting.
you're hitting those lunges like every day." And now I don't lunge every day now, but I do it a couple times a week if I can. Just lunging. I try to go up to a quarter mile with like some weight on my back, and
That's a lot.
yeah, but it builds up. I do a lot of that stuff barefoot. It builds up my feet. It builds up my muscles in my feet.
So
Um,
good for your feet.
so good for your feet. It also is so good for like jujitsu. Like I said, everything kind of right now. That's where my obsession, where my focus is. Um, that kind of gives me the jujitsu is kind of like meditation that gives me like the space I need to be there for my family and then also be a good teammate at work. Um, yeah,
Man, no, that's amazing. I have to say, like you literally the perfect example of, what an active father, should do with working out, with training. Because you said you always pursue the hard things,
yeah,
and then you're always being intuitive and you're always learning. So it's like those three things in combination, it's like you just keep getting better and better
yeah.
and more functional. Like that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, we have to also like that injury last year taught me a lot because I knew when I injured myself, that was like the calculator went on, right, and it said you haven't been sleeping, you
Ah,
haven't been eating right, you haven't been training right, and you picked up a weight that was too big for you. And in my brain, it wasn't too big for me because like months before that, I'd been doing like reps of sets of 30 with 150-pound kettlebell, like no problem. But I was like, yeah, but you're not there right now. And so,
true.
so for me, I'm always kind of taking inventory before I pick up anything heavy. I'm like, all right, where are you? And then I'll leave it in the tank now. Like I used to go, to failure, or, but now I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna leave something in the tank. Like, I, I had a good rack pull on Monday last week, and I was like, I could probably do 550. I could probably, from the knee, like I could probably do more. And I'm like, nah, 530 is fine. You know, I'm going to train. I'm going to do something tomorrow. I'm going to do something the next day. And then, it is what it is. But like I said, the best is the enemy of the good. And
Yeah.
I try to really remember that in all the things I do and just try to make sure that I'm keeping my core values in line, which is like, I got my purpose, and my purpose is my family. That's really important to me. I think it probably has to do with losing my father at a young age. I want to be there for my boys. I want to be there to play sports with them and teach them how to do things, and take them out in the woods, teach them how to hunt, teach them how to like take care of themselves, teach them to be good men. Um, and I need to keep some sort of power to do that, which is another principle of mine. Is like power. What do I mean by that? I mean just the ability to do stuff,
Yeah.
the ability to take care of my family, the ability to take care of others. As a soldier, as a lawyer, I need to be able to take care of other people. Um, I need and have to be able to take care of myself. So you have to have power to do that. So you have to like that's an important thing. And then perseverance, and I know you get that part. It's just continuing to go, continuing to work at it. Those are kind of the three things as I sit back and think about what are my core values that I'm always trying to like live in alignment with. And it's those things. Um, those are
I like that.
yeah,
Wow. No, that makes sense. And it's cool to see, because as you're saying that, I remember seeing your stories on social media, and it all reflects all of that exactly, like your consistency,
Yeah.
and the discipline and the intuitive style, cross training, and like, so it's cool to hear you say these things because I can exactly see what you're talking about.
Yeah. No,
Um,
thanks.
oh no, definitely. I'm curious, what you've had so many amazing experiences within the army, um, and throughout your life. What would you say is the most powerful experience that shaped your belief in what you could achieve?
Ooh.
It's a tough one.
Well, I think there's. Hmm. I'm
Seems
probably.
like
Yeah.
seems like you have a few.
Yeah. I think I've had a lot of. I mean, I think meeting, my half brother in England that I talked about. Meeting him. I didn't meet him until I was 17 years old. So there's like a whole story even there. But I met him when I was 17, and at the time, I was I'd gotten in street fights and stuff like that growing up, and I thought I was pretty good. Like I usually won. Um, I was working on my other brother is a commercial fisherman, and I was working on his fishing boat, and I was, hitting the gym when I wasn't out at sea, like doing manual labor at sea, and I was pretty strong. Young. I'd grown up working on a farm. I'd done construction. I'd done things like that, and so I was always playing sports, and I remember seeing my brother who was not as big as me. This is the Tai Chi brother that I met when I was about 17. And he's outside doing all this stuff. And, I go out, I'm like, hey, does that even do anything? And he's like, oh, come check it out. And so he's like, seriously. And like, I went and I kind of like threw a punch. He's like, no, 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 I want you to try to hit me. And this is a brother I've never met before. And I'm like, man, I don't want to hurt you. Like, you're like, this is 23 years older than me. And so he's 40. And I'm like, and he's smaller than me. And I'm like, I don't want to hurt you. And he's like, no, seriously. So I go at him and he grabs me somehow and he throws me. And I land on my face and I'm like grass and dirt like going in my mouth as I'm like sliding across the ground. And I'm like,
Really?
whoa, I gotta know how to do that. Like that's cool. And so I was able to work it out with my college like a year later and go over and study with him in England. Um, Still didn't quite figure out how to do it the way he did it. Like he was, he had been a kickboxer and he had done all types of stuff. He was when he was younger, um, and he just would maul me whenever I would try to like hang with him or learn anything.
Really?
And that's what led me to boxing. To be honest with you, like that's what later led me to boxing because he told me when I was doing Tai Chi with him in my 20s,
Yeah,
he's like, "Look, man, if you want to learn how to fight, like Tai Chi is going to take you like 20 years to learn how to fight. You
that's
go learn
interesting.
boxing or something like that. That'll teach you how to fight. Then you can start to apply these principles." So I did the boxing, and then I've taught people boxing over the years. I'm okay. I can teach someone the basics, and like I I mean there's guys that I deployed to Afghanistan with who are now retired from the military. They're still boxing, and they reach out. They're like, "Hey, I'm still boxing. Like this is my coach. I'm doing these things," and I'm like, "Man, you're still boxing after all these years?" But I think it was that it was coming across my brother and realizing because he and my other brother, they're same dad, two moms, they're 2 months apart. My other brother, who's also like a hero to me, I mean, they're the same age. He's doing all right, but he's kind of held together by like glue and duct tape. And then I got the Tai Chi brother, who's still moving really well.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where I've seen kind of how I've had the benefit of seeing how life has affected them.
The two
And
extremes.
then on top of all that, I had my father, who I mean, when I was little, like he would sit on the steps and watch me like outside playing baseball with himself because he had all types of health problems, which is why he died when he was dead. Um,
Ah,
so for me, I think those types of experiences and like learning from people and my brother who's been the commercial fisherman, he's done oystering, been in the seafood industry, he's worked hard, he's one of the hardest dudes I've ever seen, and some of the physical things I've seen that dude got pull off on a fishing boat was like mind-blowing stuff that you're like, whoa, like this guy is a hard guy.
oh yeah.
But seeing how well, one of the things he told me was one of the best things young people can do is listen to their elders. And he didn't mean like everybody. He meant like people who know stuff. and he knew some stuff. He told me, he's like, "Hey, pay attention, listen, like make smart decisions." And so I had the one brother who's worked really hard physically, and I have the other brother who's been doing like Tai Chi and things like that. And both of them gave me just great lessons, and they kind of made me who I am. And you know, anytime we all three get together, it's great, which is rare because we all live in different parts of the world. But um, yeah, I think my brothers really did a lot to shape me, and those sorts of experiences have led me to bigger experiences, like with the
Oh yeah. No,
jujitsu.
sounds like you've been blessed with, so many good influences and mentors throughout your life for sure.
I think so. I've had to seek a lot of them out. Again, that whole thing, like reaching out to you, that comes from my brother, who's the Tai Chi master. When I went and trained with him when I was in college, he was like, "Oh, I just look for the people who are the best in a field or considered like top tier, and I call them or email them or go meet them. That's all I do." And so that's what I do. I find it doesn't matter what it is. It could be like, I don't know, maybe I'll take up like, curling in a year or something. That'll. But if I would just, I want to get good at this. What do? I go find somebody who knows. Like, I mean, I'm training jiu-jitsu with a guy who's considered, he's an icon. Like when I go to other gyms and travel and they see if I have like a 50-50 rash guard or shorts on, they'll be like, "Have you ever been to that gym?" I was like, "Yeah, I trained there. Like I competed for that gym." And they're like, and I mean, I'm just a blue belt. I've just been doing it about 3 years. And they're like, "Yeah, but you get to train with like Ryan Hall and all the guys in that gym." I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I get to learn from them for sure. Yeah, it's great." And it's when you train like that, whether it's powerlifting, whether it's CrossFit, um, you whatever you're into, like you will fast forward, and it's the
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's the mental side of it's huge. The recovery side of it, for me, with what I do as a lawyer, it frees up so much bandwidth to be good and to be a good guy. That's another thing. Being a good
Yeah,
for my kids.
it sounds like you have such a good balance that, so many people are struggling to have. Like, and you prioritize, your family, but you have your values, like, working out and staying in good shape is just like brushing your teeth and taking a shower, where it's like, they're non-negotiables. And so that's why I say you're, such a good example. One of the reasons, because it's so cool to see that you're doing it all, and you're helping with your wife's, recovery through the hard times and you're taking care of your kids with her and still maintaining your health and then your career. And that's not easy to do.
Yeah, it's a lot harder if you don't do it. And that's the thing. I mean, the Pentagon is stressful. Uh, at times, it can be, and there are days where it is like a pressure. And I've been very fortunate to start going to doing things like physical therapy. Um, right now I'm starting physical therapy in a few weeks because I tore my LCL in the Virginia IBJJF Open in the finals match that I had. I did
Oh,
manage to win, but got my
nice.
LCL, and it's just a grade one tear. It's already,
Okay.
but I go since I've been at the Pentagon. The doctors have slowed me down, and they haven't said stop doing what you're doing. One of them said that one time, and then she said, "You know what? I think I'm wrong. I think all these things you're doing is how you're like holding, like how you're doing functioning as well as you are.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, do your standing meditation, do your rope stuff, do your jujitsu, do your lifting. Like, I'm not going to criticize it, but when you have an injury, let me send you to physical therapy. Or they did a sleep study on me and found out that I have moderate to severe sleep apnea, which I would have never guessed. Um, and so I started, and I'm waiting to get my like CPAP machine, which should help my
Yeah.
recovery. But at the same time, in the meantime, they're like, well, if you sleep on your side, you'll be able to like sleep better than because for years I just slept on my back, and I started sleeping on my side because I went to the doctor. They said, hey, this will help. We'll get you the machine, but this will help in the meantime to kind of like clean up your sleep a little bit. Because
Good.
yeah, sleep's something. It's like the hugest thing. Like I got a
Oh
buddy,
yeah.
yeah, buddy who's a judge advocate. he actually just qualified for the CrossFit Games. A guy named Jack Roseman, and yeah, I just met him through a friend this last year. I had no idea we had a judge advocate in the Army who he finished 25th last year in the CrossFit Games, and he just qualified.
25th.
Yeah,
Man, that's amazing.
yeah. So he's, I know they limited the field to 30 this year, so he just qualified for it. I think like a week
Nice.
or two ago, and I did a Q&A with him. That's it's being turned into an article. Me and a friend, we sat down with him, asked him a bunch of questions. But this is a guy who's one of the top CrossFit athletes in the world, and he's like, yeah, rest is the biggest thing. Like sleep is like the biggest thing.
Recovery, yeah. That makes sense.
And yeah, and so that's I try to prioritize that. And I know like if I get a bad night's sleep, the next day I might be like, maybe I'll do a light workout today. Maybe I'm not going to try to like max out on a squat. Or,
Oh, 100%. I've had days where bad sleep and I would try to go for a run. And it's so hot in Florida, in the summer. And I didn't know, but when you're sleep deprived, I can't remember, your heat regulation is off. And so you can't like
yeah,
really go as hard in the heat. And so there's so many things that are messed up when your sleep is off. So it's good that you're intuitive with listening to your body.
yeah, yeah, no,
Man,
for sure.
what would you say is your fundamental why that's driving you to just be so relentless and so consistent?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it is my purpose, which is my boys. It wasn't always that. Um, well, I don't know. Maybe it was. So, people say having kids changes you. I think for me, having kids, especially my first, my oldest was born, it revealed who was. Like it was like a light, it was like a light switch. It
Interesting.
was something just like it was always there. It was always ready. And as soon as my oldest came into the world, it was like this like switch just clicked, and here I am. And it was almost as if everything I've been doing up until that point was to prepare me to be a good father. Now I do think, I mean, this is something I talk to close friends about a lot. Like we all have our demons. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And I think it's important, and I think in friendships and relationships, it's important to like talk that stuff out. Like know like what's driving, what's your what's kind of what is it? And I think for me, it was like the way I grew up, like losing my father, having some other crazy things happen in my childhood as I grew. Um, it was like there's got to be an easier way. There's got to be a better way, and I'm always looking for kind of the optimal way forward. Um, you can think about card games or anything like that. You get a certain hand, maybe you have to discard some cards, but if you understand the game, you know what the optimal cards to keep are. And so in every situation, I'm trying to look for what's the optimal outcome here. How
I see.
and so you think about it like with lifting, right? Like they talk about Louis Simmons talked about uh, Prilip, I think it's Perlipin's chart, or he always mispronounced the name. Louis was big on mispronouncing things, but I think he called the guy Prilipin, but I think it was Perlipin. But he was like, when you're doing max effort, you want to do a minimal of 4 reps to get to your top set, a maximal of 11, and an optimal of 7. And so when you would follow that chart that this Soviet scientists had worked out many years before with percentages and everything else, like if you're doing it right and you're dialed in, you're probably hitting that 7 to 8 reps, and you're getting the optimal amount without like overtaxing your central nervous system. And so I'm always looking for like optimal stuff. But I think the why, yeah, I mean, it's now it's my family. It's not just my kids. It's my wife. We've built a really strong. Having a good like loyal partner who you just can trust in. I mean, that having peace in your home, that sort of thing,
Oh yeah. Huge.
valuable. I think I always wanted that, and now it's like, all right, how do I help my boys become the men they want to be? Because I'm not going to tell them what they have to do for a job or anything like that. I want them to be able to to explore, but I want them to not have to live the hardships I had to live to get here.
I see.
But I want them to be tough. I want them to be strong.
Yeah, like to find their own path and then the challenges that come along with that.
Yeah, And
I
you
see.
hear people say choose your path, and that's why I train the way I do. I could, yeah, I could totally not do that, and but that's not where I'm at.
I know what you mean.
In every aspect of my life, it's how to optimize things, and then how do I prepare for bad bad times. Because things are going to happen. I worked for in I worked for a federal bankruptcy judge from 2008 2010 during the great financial crisis, and so and before that, when I was in law school, I worked for a Chapter 7 bankruptcy trustee, and my job was to like look at everybody's stuff who was filing bankruptcy, and you'd see doctors and like lawyers, and you see all types of people going through these bankruptcy situations. You're looking at how they live, because you're reading like months and months of bank statements, and you're like,
Interesting.
yeah, and you start like picking it apart that way. And you start thinking, huh, well, how do I again, back to my other brother, the fisherman, who said, hey, pay attention to what your elders tell you. And in that
Oh
case,
yeah.
these people coming into bankruptcy court weren't necessarily saying, hey, let me give you some advice. But by me observing their example, like good or bad, it was like, oh, that's a good example of what not to do. And that's
That's
important.
true.
That's very important.
You learn just as much from, yeah, the extremes, from not necessarily the ones doing it the best, but also the worst. That man, I've got like so many questions about each chapter of a we should do a part two, seriously.
I'm always down. Always
Okay.
fun. Yeah, like, this is really enjoyable. So I'm always down to talk to you again, because I'll probably have questions for you too. Um, especially as I keep trying to dead hang with more and more weight attached to my.
All right. No, I like that. And I like seeing your numbers go up too. It's inspiring. It's cool.
Thanks, man. Yeah,
Um,
appreciate it.
oh no, absolutely. And no, I'm definitely down to do a part two. I'll ask you one more question
Yeah,
and then we can definitely do a part two because there's like so many questions within each like chapter as you described. Because like I've got so many questions about that. And then the special forces, working with special forces, and then you're a very interesting person. I don't know if you realize that.
thank you.
The I'm actually gonna just go with a fun one for now. I'm gonna save the deeper ones for next time. Um, the if your journey was turned into a movie, what would the title be?
So this one actually comes from you said.
Oh no, it could be deep. No, it's whatever you want it to be.
So um, my youngest came into my room one night, probably I don't know, 6 months ago, and it's dark in the hallway. It was light in my room, and I was like, "Hey, John, you need to go get back to bed." And he just held on to me tight, and he said, "Dad, I'm afraid to cross the line." It's like cross the dark. I thought about how deep that was at the moment, because like he's just got to go across the dark hallway to his bedroom, and I was like crossing the dark. And so that's what I would, if I had to write a book or tell my story, it's like crossing the dark, because that's like everything, like when I'm going to, whether it's, going to court, going anywhere, that anxiety we feel, that's crossing the dark. And so much of my life, like going back to my childhood, like all the success I've had has been the other side of like crossing something.
Man, that is deep. I like that. That could be the title of this episode, honestly. I like that. That's so true because it's getting uncomfortable and just blindly stepping into something out of your comfort zone
Yeah.
in order to get to the next. I like that, man. Um, wow. Thank you so much, Daniel. I appreciate it. Yeah, I definitely want to do a part two. For now, you can hang around for a minute, after, but concludes episode 30 with Daniel, and we'll definitely do a part two in the very near future, maybe a couple weeks. Stop this.